All right. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. I presented last year remotely, but it's much better to be here in person to speak with all of you. I'm joining you here today from Pfizer. I work specifically in our biopharmaceuticals group in biotherapeutics Pharma MES USA. In my current role as manufacturing systems business lead, I'm responsible for our overall manufacturing system portfolio that supports our R&D manufacturing activities. My background's in chemical engineering, and prior to that, I worked in our solid dose manufacturing area for clinical manufacturing, where I focused on actual clinical manufacturing operations as well as process development. In that role, when I was trying to figure out what was wrong with a process, how to become more efficient, we were also implementing a lot of new manufacturing technology processes. And in bringing in these new technologies, what we quickly realized is we had a significant gap in how we were treating data and what our approach was to digitization. Most recently in 2022, I've had the opportunity to kind of take a digital strategy across our whole biotherapeutics portfolio in R&D, which I'll talk about today, and really just have a unique experience to do MES and digital transformation in a great place. So I want to start with Pfizer's purpose because it really drives everything we do. And Pfizer's purpose is to deliver breakthroughs that change patients' lives. And specifically in research and development, we are key to fulfilling that mission for Pfizer. So whether it's taking early candidates from discovery or advancing later stage compounds, we really have the ability to accelerate and bring those life-saving therapies to patients faster. So I want to talk about a little bit about what my current role is and what the scope of operations is. I think anytime you're doing a digital transformation exercise, it's important to understand the scope and the business process that we're working at. So within biotherapeutics Pharma MES USA, or I'll call it BTX, we have a footprint in Andover, Massachusetts, Chesterfield, as well as in North Carolina. So a lot of different both sites as well as production groups, as well as users. Additionally, I also support work in the cell banking and the process development space. That's been a really unique experience for me to see kind of the early process development so that I can bring the tools to that area that help us with our later manufacturing as well. So drug substance, drug product development, but then also non-GMP pilot scale manufacturing. Once we take those lessons learned from our pilot manufacturing scales, we go to our early phase clinical manufacturing facilities, which produce both the clinical supply products as well as critical data that's used for regulatory filings later in the process development cycle. Additionally, because of the scope of facilities within BTX Pharma MES USA, as well as our external vendor activities, scheduling planning are key to ensure that we meet critical timelines, as well as regulatory filings. When I think about digital transformation in manufacturing, I like to think of it in two areas. One is impact pillars, or what are the things that I'm trying to encourage everyone in the organization to do? And then enablers, or really at a high level, how do we get that done? From impact pillars, I think it's first important that we have a standard, and I probably should have put digital work process in there. But really, that's important because in an organization as large as Pfizer, if we don't have harmonization among our sites, among our operating procedures, it's really difficult to do any type of digital transformation without a lot of resourcing to customize that deployment for every single group. Second, data-driven decision-making. So, we need to make sure that whatever decisions we're making, whether it's GMP, even business decisions that we are collecting and have the ability to make decisions based on that data. In order to deploy these standard work processes and implement the systems needed for data-driven decision-making, it's important that we effectively develop an organization to manage this, but also partnership is so key. So whether that's internal partners within your organization or external partners at vendors, none of us can do digital transformation on our own, so it really takes a village to do that. And then finally, leading technology. So if we want to continue to accelerate and advance, we're going to have to continue to take advantage of the best technology that we have available. So a lot of times people talk about the value of digital transformation, but I think one thing that I've realized over my experience is that it's really a journey, and that you may start with one use case, but then how do you get to kind of an end state? So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're approaching that challenge and what we're doing to get there. So if we think about manufacturing, as a kind of a set of unit operations in its own, we have a number of different functions. So we have production planning, material management, production execution, and depending on your organization, your current IT systems, MES may include all or some of these activities. For us, we really see the first step in our digital transformation is foundational digitalization. So really taking all of our core business operations and getting them into a system that enables to do two things: standard work processes and data-driven decision-making. Once we're able to do that, we can gain a lot of advantages in terms of collecting all that data, having it available, but also being compliant. But even if we just digitize select systems, most of us work in pretty variable environments where there's lots of systems in our organizations. So that's why it's important that we also deploy the integrations and the data solutions needed to structure and aggregate that data so it can be effectively used for any purpose within the business. I also think it's important to call out that sometimes we think about, oh, well, if we make the data lake, it'll be available for everyone, but not everyone has the same needs from their data. So I think it's important to call out that, for my organization, I have process development scientists, I have manufacturing operations, I have business analysts, different communities who need different levels and different types of data. So what I see as my goal is really to not only capture that data and contextualize it within systems like MES, but also to provide and structure it to those end users in a way that allows them to make meaningful change in the way they work. So whether that's more traditional continuous improvement activities or having that data available for modeling and advanced artificial intelligence, it all starts at the lowest level of actually having that data captured and in a contextualized way. To take this a step further, I think it's important to, I like to talk about what I call process-focused digital transformation. So if you just digitize something, it's really like taking a picture, and I think the first talk really talked about it. You can scan a document, you can put it in a document management system, but that's not really going to change the way your business works because you're not capturing the data, you don't really have any ability to work with that data, so it's kind of flat. So I like to think about it more in terms of what I've seen referred to as digitalization, where we not only look to take a paper or manual process and move it to a digital solution, but we also take that change opportunity to capture more data than we were doing before, create better workflows, and really create an improved change in the business. And really, from my experiences, if we only do the digitization and take whatever they're doing on paper and move it to electronic, you end up carrying all of the issues you had on paper with you to your electronic systems. So I'm a strong advocate of process-focused digital transformation. I'm going to show a little diagram here about how we approach that. So because my team supports a number of sites, it's really important for us to look not at just specific use cases, but at how the changes that we're going to impact will influence the organization as a whole. So in our manufacturing development organization, we have our core work processes. So we design, we manufacture, and then we transfer that technology to our partners. And then all of the business process data that's generated in the execution of those activities. So we need to understand, and especially as we progress towards really an integrated manufacturing sense, if I change something in the electronic batch record system, how is that going to have an impact on all of the other systems and activities that my workforce deals with every day? So by looking at the overall process of the business and strategically identifying problems or opportunities and developing pilots that can then be scaled out, it creates a cycle by which we can incrementally improve the efficiency, compliance, and productivity of the business. A lot of times in digital transformation, I'm asked about value drivers and what is this worth? What is the return on investment? In research and development, it can be a little bit difficult to define because our products are not sold. They're used for clinical trials, but we do support, we also support all the regulatory filings. So, as well as GMP clinical materials. So the first one is really compliance. So using digital systems, we can create a process that leverages review by exception. This reduces human error and also increases our data integrity. Also productivity, so by leveraging automation and more efficient workflows, we can accelerate the rate at which we perform operations or find different areas to become more efficient. One place this plays a big role for us in the R&D space is if we can reduce the amount of kind of the cost of quality. So if our scientists and engineers are not writing deviations, they're not doing manual transcription, that gives them more time and capacity to focus on developing better processes and making continuous improvement. And then finally, precision. So a lot of digital solutions are going to give you the compliance, they're going to give you productivity, but if you're not actually capturing and contextualizing the data appropriately, you won't have the data needed to make the precise, kind of decisions you need. So the way that plays out for us is when we're developing a new process, we may need to do a series of experiments to validate that design space. The more data we have and the more effective we can utilize that data, the less material we need to consume in development and the faster we can move towards commercialization. And overall, although compliance, productivity, precision are all separate, altogether they really create an environment where we at Pfizer can do better work, move faster, and ultimately accelerate breakthroughs to change patients' lives. So I liked in the first presentation how we were talking a lot about people and how people are really at the center of everything. And I kind of want to take that a step further. So in terms of digital transformation, I like to think about people plus a process, and then when aided with the right technology, really creates an advancement that we can move forward. So this is really just kind of a generic diagram that I built. But when I think about my organization and the work that we do in pharmaceutical MES, apologize, that's really small. I think about we have people and then three main areas. So one, I call manufacturing operations experience, and that's really what all of us are here to talk about today. So how do we interface with our operators? How do we provide them the information they need? And how do we capture and enforce the right workflows in the business? The other two pillars that I look at are process data intelligence. So once we've collected all that data, how are we using it? And then finally, production support systems. The way that plays out at Pfizer is our digital strategy is led kind of from the division level, but there are some common enterprise systems that we leverage. So next I'm going to take a deep dive specifically into the manufacturing operations space that I look at and kind of break out how I view the people, the business processes, and the technologies involved. So first is people. So number one is manufacturing operators. If you're not talking to your operators until you're training them on deploying the MES system, you're going to be disappointed, and they're going to probably tell you something that you should have known a long time ago. And very similar to that, production supervisors, quality assurance, materials management, and senior leadership. I think we're very good at engaging leadership sometimes when we want their initial endorsement, but I also think it's important to continue to maintain stakeholder engagement. As different bumps and challenges come along the way, it's important to have that core. It really starts with batch record creation, issuance, and execution as really a core activity. But that activity doesn't happen in a silo. There's also how are we managing materials and dispensing them? How are we handling operator data entry? Are we going to be fully integrated? Are there going to be manual components? And then also just how does the plant manage? Is it one line? Is it multiple lines? Because all of those different considerations are going to play a factor in what an ideal solution might be for that group. And then finally, technology. So based on the people that you're working with and the business process that you're trying to address, there's a number of different technology solutions that can really solve those challenges and bring value to you. So overall, from what is my digital manufacturing vision, it's really to create a cohesive, efficient, accelerate product development. And then finally, we want to implement solutions to get the work process that we desire. So a lot of times that means actually doing the front-end work to say, what is wrong with this work process, even before we jump to technology solutions, because that'll help us avoid the pitfalls that we have in our current process. So just a little bit deeper on that topic. So, what are some things to get started with your first or maybe any MES project? First is business analysis. I think user background is really important because it'll help you understand what is needed to deploy which tools. What I mean by this is really what is the digital acuity or what is the change agility of the individuals who you're deploying solutions to. I also think it's important to really work on high-value use cases because those are going to get you the return that you're looking for, as well as making sure you have consensus with all of the users involved. Second, technology partners. There's a lot of folks both here as well as around the world who have a lot of exciting technology solutions. I think it's important to find partners who understand your business at an intimate level, because that's going to help them not only serve you in the kind of the current state in what you have as technology, but also what you're looking to develop going forward in the future. I guess it's kind of two more things. So one, really the ability to develop dynamic partnerships with your vendors. This will help you develop, pilot, evaluate new features, and I think a really collaborative development experience not only helps the vendors advance their product, but also helps you as a manufacturer get some of those high-value priorities that you need taken care of. And I think the other thing that I wish I'd known before jumping into the MES space is that there's a lot of solutions out there. So the more you can try them, understand what the pros and cons of different solutions are, the better off you'll be. So there's one diagram I made just to kind of share with the audience that I think I'm interested in people's thoughts on. But I see that there's kind of this evolving spectrum of MES solutions on the market. So really from what some people call traditional heavy MES, what I've called high configurability, and then kind of a lower configurability solutions that are more paper on glass. I don't think there's any solution that sits solidly in one bucket or the other, but all of the solutions that we're seeing on the market today really exist on some kind of spectrum. From a paper on glass perspective, they're definitely easier to deploy, lower resourcing, and from my experience also from a maintenance and support perspective are a lot more efficient. So in terms of getting something fast, getting something that works, we've had a lot of success with the lighter solutions in some of those spaces. But some of the challenges that we've had are where we have very complicated workflows or we're seeking high levels of automation. Those solutions don't always have the level of configurability required for the work that we want. On the flip side of that, where you have a very configurable, highly parameterized and configured MES, it may take more resource to deploy, it may take more resource to support, but you have a lot more levers and functions to lean on when you need to get different things done in the business. I'm not advocating for solutions on either side or one's better than the other, but what I think is important is depending on the work process and the business that you're trying to digitize or the site that you're working with, different solutions will fit better in different areas. So why is this important at Pfizer, and what is kind of our goal with data liberation and accelerating patients? So we believe that we can accelerate our product development by using data, and in order to get data, we'll need to deploy manufacturing systems. So number one is understanding our process. We're under extreme pressure to accelerate the rate at which we develop medicines, so the more data we can get off of fewer manufacturing runs in the clinical phase, the better we'll be prepared for commercial filings later down the road. Additionally, today, even where we have data captured in structured systems, it's often difficult to see the full picture because those systems are siloed. So the more we can integrate that data together, both from multiple, for example, batch record systems in research and development, the better we're going to be able to see the full picture of activities in our business. And then finally, we see a significant opportunity to do what we call document automation. So whether it's regulatory filings, C of A's, really any type of GMP or quality document that we need to generate, we're looking at ways to accelerate authoring, review, and approval of those documents through leveraging validated data sources. So if we collect our data, this should be easy, right? And I think, probably speaking to all of you here, no surprise that it's not. So this is really representative, but for example, in research and development, we have multiple ERP systems, multiple MES systems, and on our commercial side, we have a similar menagerie of different tools. And what becomes difficult is, in many cases, we have different identifiers, there's different naming, and it's really hard to, or it's not really possible to automatically integrate those two together. So what we're looking to do is really create what's called a data product, which will seek standardized inputs from both our R&D and our commercial systems to create a unified data set that we can use for document automation, technology transfer, or any other use case in the business that relies on critical, qualified, and verified data. And our goal is that by doing this, we should be able to take a BLA prep and review process that today takes months in some cases, as data points are tracked down manually through PDFs, into a pretty trivial exercise using a data set that's been validated. However, if you're not sufficiently tagging or parameterizing your data in your MES, this is almost impossible, right? So we need to have unique identifiers on our data to be able to say, okay, this is the unit 1 phase temperature for this batch, and that I can always go get that point. If we're recording them in a less distinct way, it's really impossible to ultimately create this correlation together, especially in a research and development environment where my products only sit in my pipeline for a few years, and then they go on to commercial. So I have to be extremely agile and make sure that we're doing things efficiently. I'm running a little short on time, so I'm going to accelerate just a little bit. So organizational structure and engagement, I think it's really important that you engage with all stakeholders collaboratively and agree on who does what. So whether it's the business line, it's IT, or your vendors, any project's going to rely on an effective collaboration between those three. And each organization, that's going to be different. Want to talk a little bit about value drivers and emerging challenges. So as we do foundational digital projects and get people off of paper, I think there's some, in each of those categories, we're seeing value from, human error avoidance, accelerating training cycles, and even accessing data ad hoc versus today, if it's on paper, people can't do that. But we are seeing some challenges. So as we move from paper to electronic, we have more change management than we did because now we have a system. We also have siloed systems in many cases, which require manual transcription. And then finally, limited accessibility to data, especially if it's isolated from a cybersecurity perspective, or uncontextualized or poorly structured. In the cases where we're doing more integrated projects, so actually bringing systems together, integrating the data, we can see additional value really from accelerated review and release cycles as we bring the data together and don't force people to go look at all these different systems. That increases productivity and accelerates how people work. But also by having that integrated data set, we can start to develop models and artificial intelligence tools that can provide those insights that we're looking for. So just to close, and I only have a minute or so left, so apologies if I move through this a little fast. But I wanted to talk about my vision for Pharma MES 2030 and what are some of the key opportunities and needs that I see evolving in the next few years. So first, I think we're seeing a significant change in how our operators interface with our MES systems. So whether it's biometrics to capture electronic signatures, bringing plant analytics to the floor in terms of Internet of Things, signs, dashboards, or even just how do we actually interface with the software, right? So today people bring a tablet, they have a workstation, but I think we're seeing rapid changes in how we interact with technology, and that will benefit all of us in the long term, both from a training and compliance perspective. The other thing I'm seeing as well is an advancement in advanced process control. So whether it's new process analytical tools, multivariate control, all of these things are advancing at a rapid pace, especially as we move into more advanced manufacturing modalities, such as continuous manufacturing and gene therapy. In order to effectively deploy these solutions, we really need model-ready data, both in the MES as well as a cohesive strategy on aggregating that data. So what if we take a little bit, both this kind of the automation side, the advanced process control, but also the operation side of how operators are using it, what is that going to create, or what kind of environment are we going to have going forward? And I was doing a little research and found this this description of what's called cyber manufacturing in an article from Manufacturing Letters. And it describes this term of really a system where the translation of data from interconnected systems into predictive and prescriptive operations. So I see a future where all of our systems are integrated together, and using digital twins and models in an online fashion, we can actually take proactive and prescriptive action, or kind of advice to the operators as they're manufacturing. But there's going to be some challenges to do that. So first, not only do we need to connect all of our work processes, but we also need to start to integrate those with those advanced artificial intelligence tools. So how will we securely transact in a low latency way? If the process needs the value, it needs the value. How will we manage this with software as a service? So where we have internal control systems and external vendors, how would we effectively join those tools together? And then what are the business continuity considerations that come with that? And then finally, I don't want to underemphasize this, the workforce skills. Do our businesses have the skills to implement an architecture of this scale? So finally, just to summarize really what do I see as our emerging needs? Continued emphasis on collecting data in AI and model-ready structures. Integration, I think we're continuing to see the evolution of heterogeneous solutions. So my MES system is really composed of a number of different technology solutions that I need to effectively integrate together. And then finally, flexibility, automation, and control. So especially in the R&D space, I need infinite flexibility with just enough control for the things that I say I need to control. And that, I'm sure, makes my vendors all very happy. But we live in an evolving environment where technology is advancing very rapidly, and we need to be able to adapt with that as well as our systems. I want to leave you with a final note. So to be successful in digital transformation, our focus must be on the transformation. Digital and the technology there is only a tool that we get there. So if we try to put tools in on the same process and same kind of perspective, you're not going to be successful, or your success is going to fall short of your expectations. And then finally, I'm here on behalf of Pfizer Research and Development. There's a huge team that supports me both from a strategy perspective, but also from our IT team as well. So it takes a village, and I encourage you all to continue your work. So thank you.